This is the continuation of From Mesopotamia to Iraq, Concise history cartoon. After the U.S.-led invasion in 2003, the Baghdad Archaeological Museum was heavily looted. I remember first hearing about this several years ago and getting agitated by the coverage it was getting. That version of myself thought it was ludicrous that we should care about soulless objects from a long-dead culture when real people were being eradicated senselessly in the present. I thought it was very European. Read white, read colonialist, to care more about artifacts than humanity. On December 12, 2011, as the Iraq War was officially ending, Barack Obama said that history will judge the wisdom of this war. And that was the official party line in the autumn of George W. Bush's presidency. History will judge whether this preemptive war was worthwhile, Condoleezza Rice or Dana Perino would say. When we are dead, we will know whether we should have done the thing we have no way of knowing was a good idea today. History will judge me, said George Bush. According to IraqBodyCount.org, between 104,441 to 114,124 non-combatant Iraqi civilians have died since the beginning of the war in 2003, including at least 384 in December 2011. According to that same website, 89 more civilians have died since that first figure I just said. 89 more people died since I began writing this piece a week ago. They have names. You can look them up. I'm trying to allow history the opportunity to judge this war before we are dead. With its economic dominance as something that set it apart from other civilizations at the time, ancient Babylonia would set up trading posts in other cities. Mesopotamia not having very much raw materials to trade for the valuable things it would need from these outposts, it can be assumed that they would use their economic power to avoid paying a fair price for the materials they needed. Another one of Mesopotamia's inventions, using civilization as a tool itself. Think Escalade limousines. Think MTV cribs. Think unmanned drones. Think Tomahawk missiles. Think tanks. Think tanks and nukes and heavy metal and Air Jordans. Think oil. Think water. Think back to the end of the early dynastic period, around 2000 BCE. There were two rival cities, Umma and Lagash, warring over who had control of a major irrigation canal. The ruler of Umma, a man named Lugal-Zagessi, burned the temples of Lagash in order to dominate them and gain control of the water. Urukagina, the last ruler of Lagash, complained that it was a sin to burn his temples, and he didn't blame Lugal-Zagessi of Umma. He blamed, and his people blamed, Umma's local goddess. Rulers of these city-states were supposedly acting on behalf of their local gods, and so the people of each city viewed their dispute over resources as a holy war. And then, eventually, Sargon of Akkad defeated both of those cities and unified Babylonia for himself, for his own local god, for the home team, for all the water that flowed in the decades around the year 2000 BCE. We are burying our dead in our floors. We are inventing genocide. We all have local gods. We are history. Rinse, repeat. The royal tombs at Ur are significant because when the Ur nobility died, they would have their entire households poisoned and buried with them. Musicians with their corpse fingers on the chords of lyres, servants and soldiers, draft animals and drivers, all poisoned and buried with their masters. It is assumed that the Ur nobility stopped this practice when they realized everyone was dead, when there wasn't anyone left to judge if anyone was left. It is difficult to believe that 114,213 Iraqi civilians would not have joined the Arab Spring last year. Hosni Mubarak is on trial. Gaddafi is dead. Syria and Yemen and Bahrain are bleeding. History will judge if democracy is a good idea. History will judge if Saddam Hussein is dead. If Mesopotamia is the cradle of civilization, then what does that make our civilization? A misbehaved toddler? A sociopathic teenager? An entitled suburbanite going through quarter-life crisis? In the middle of the 3rd millennium BCE, cuneiform script had already been in use in Mesopotamia for centuries. And although the invention of writing was a big deal, it was used mostly for recording business transactions. Hundreds of thousands of clay tablets were nothing more than receipts and deeds, monuments to property, the invention of greed. However, seeing the success of cuneiform, Syrian cities on the rise decided to adopt it for their own record keeping, despite speaking a different language. They were able to attach sounds to the different glyphs and thereby not only render their own Semitic language in written form, but they helped show the Mesopotamians that it could be done as well. That everyone could do more than just count property. That they could write poetry and songs and history and stories and hymns and worship. What I'm trying to say is that until this time, Mesopotamia wasn't sure how to silently pass thoughts to each other. What I'm trying to say is that they didn't have a way to bottle and store beauty. What I'm trying to say is that by conspiring with a neighbor who didn't sound like them, Mesopotamia was able to invent new depths of tenderness and surprise. What I'm trying to say is that the key to our awakening is in the throats of others. But it has to be quiet. Museum quiet. For us to be able to hear it.